Good afternoon. Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you have joined me today. I'm outside. It's beautiful. The last day in May, the 31st. We're entering the end of spring and the beginning of summer. Yes. Well, I've put a lot of bright colors on my table and on me because I thought this is a day of color. When it's gray and smoky outside, I feel like wearing charcoal and gray and black and touch it up with color. But today, we could be anywhere in the world. It feels like I keep thinking of the beautiful Italian sea. It's unmatched in summer. And Italy borders on several seas, actually. Well, if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please pause and get your tea. And I will show you what I have for you today. This really all started with this fun little hot pink and French green pot. And it could be magenta, but I think it reminds me of hot pink from the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was a popular color. And I only have the pot, and I don't have any other tea items. So I found a little gold pitcher and a little turquoise cup, which I thought added a little more color. And then I added some carnations, and they smell so good. I've had these carnations for several weeks. They still have their scent. They look as good as they did then. And I put an extra little flower with them in the vase. And it's a little blue vase. We're just going to have every color imaginable today on the tea table. Well, let's get started. Let's pour out. I feel like I need a cup of tea. And I let this cup sit out here on the deck for a few minutes. And I think a little bug got in there, so I have to... Oh my goodness. It's not a little bug. I'm sorry. Oh my goodness gracious. Whoa. I don't know what that was. We're in the real world here. Well, let me show you the treat before I pour out, okay? Because it's a healthy treat, and it's actually what I had for breakfast. Strawberries, beautiful strawberries, and this wonderful crackle hardtack that is so wonderful, delicious, with my sharp, thin sliced cheddar cheese. And it makes the most wonderful tea table or breakfast or little snack, all healthy. And yes, that's what we're going to do today. Well, I brought a special card. This was a Mother's Day card I wanted to show you. Now, isn't that a beautiful idea? When you have someone close to you that lives far away, send them a card like this. Isn't that beyond gorgeous? So that is on the tea table too. I thought I'm going to show that. And then I have this lovely pot of flowers that is sitting on my deck, and it's just doing so well out here. Well, we've had windy days too. And the windy days in my place make the trees shake, and my deck gets covered with so I have to get the blower out, or my husband gets the blower out, and we blow it off, and it's like vacuuming the deck. It's really a great, wow, what a fabulous invention. Yes, we're so blessed. And people in the Midwest that have snow blowers, you know, that 50 years ago, people didn't have that. And they were sweeping the deck and shoveling the snow and We're just the richest people on earth. I'm convinced of it. Well, I wanted to show you one other thing on my I have a little candle. I can't light it out here because it will blow out, but there it is. I thought that was fun. And then I had these fun napkins with a wreath of flowers. And I've got lots of touches of yellow. And when I see a work of art, I love when there's touches of yellow. And my butterfly is yellow. And I have yellow in well, it's actually green, but it's a yellow green in my shawl. So we are celebrating. Now let's try this again. I'm going to be brave and I'm going to have a cup of tea with you. So many of you tell me that you really have tea with me, and I love it. I think it is such a wonderful way to connect. Who could have ever imagined, even 10 years ago, that I could sit here and have tea with you? I mean, and talk to you just like we're right in the same room. And even though you can't speak back to me, you can write back to me, and I hear from you. And I appreciate all your fabulous comments. Well, butterflies are kind of my theme today. Without trying, I realized I have a butterfly in each of my earrings. I have a butterfly here. And I think I have a butterfly on my, I think that this is almost like a butterfly. My shawl is almost like a big butterfly, yes. But I have butterflies here. So I love natural things. I love bumblebees and the beauty of the design. You know, we've talked about that. Napoleon loved bumblebees because they worked so hard and they work together and they get a lot done. And they create this beautiful, sweet honey. Well, I want to talk about several things. We're listening to Telemann today, and he's a German composer born in the late 1600s. You know, so many of the great composers are born in the month of March. He's born March 14th in the late 1600s. Scarlatti from Italy, born in the late 1600s. Vivaldi from Italy, born in the late 1600s, all Baroque composers that then influenced the classical era. And in reading about Telemann, you know, I knew that he was a truly great composer. He lived a long life, 86 years, and he was extremely productive. They think he wrote more music than any composer. I believe he wrote 3,000 pieces and perhaps more. He also, and Corelli was also in that Italian school. So you have Vivaldi, Scarlatti, Corelli, and others. I can't mention all of them. Late 16s, moving into the 17s. And then the same in Germany, you had Johann Sebastian Bach, George Friedrich Handel, yes, and then Haydn comes along. Well, it's so interesting because I did not realize, I knew Corelli influenced Bach, but Telemann influenced Bach, and they were close friends. And Bach made him the godfather of one of his children. And Telemann had 2 wives and I believe 8 children, or maybe more. His first wife died in childbirth, and his second wife went off with a Swedish officer. But he didn't let anything get him down. He didn't let anything detour him. He kept writing sacred music and secular music. He wrote for the king's court. He wrote in several king's courts. He was actually offered the position as organist in St. Thomas Church that Johann Sebastian Bach took, and he didn't take it. I don't know if he was being nice to Bach and letting Bach have it, but he was a generous soul, and he is so known for his influence because he was writing new ideas, and in the sonata and the sonatina, he was giving the world a whole new view, taking all the beauty of the past and blending it with the present and moving to the future. Yes, that's what we want to do, right? And you know, he was the son of a Lutheran pastor. And then when his father died, his mother said, he was this child. He was such a, oh my goodness, a protege. He was writing music. He was almost totally self-taught when he was so young, and he could play all these instruments, violin and the clavier, which, you know, then becomes the pipe organ. And he was also much involved in the wind instruments. And he was so engaged. His mother said, no, you can't make any money at that. So they sent him off to Leipzig to go to school to become a lawyer. Well, he went, but he couldn't study that. He said, I love music too much. And so he just kept writing and writing and writing and became famous all over the world. He was looked to from England. He was looked to from France and from Germany and from Italy. And he was very involved in Bach's ideas also, because Bach had this genius. He could take the Corelli orderliness and just move outside of that box and then almost like dance free. And then he took a lot from Telemann. He took a lot from Vivaldi. They all traded back and forth, and they were really thought well of each other. They worked together in harmony. So beautiful. And you know, this is what I wanted to talk about. Where does this music come from? You know, I was thinking the other day, what is the origin of choirs? Choral music is so divine. Well, if you read Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica, they'll say it goes back to the Greeks. But you know, that's partially true, but it goes back much further. Because the Hebrews, if you read about the temple worship of Solomon, they had 3 choirs, and they would sing antiphonally back and forth. But that wasn't the beginning of their music. You have to go way back to Passover, when they came through the Red Sea, and Miriam grabs her tambourine and leads the women in song. Well, that means they all knew a song. They knew how to sing. Moses knew how to sing. He was a genius. My husband, we talk about this. He loves Moses, and he's been teaching our Bible study here, and we're going through the Old Testament. We're in Exodus right now. And we just came through the part where Moses, you know, it's 50 days from the crossing of the Red Sea to camping at Mount Sinai, where Moses went up to the mount for 40 days and got the 10 Commandments. Well, most people in Western culture at least know that. But there is something else that Moses got that most people don't realize. It says he was given from God the pattern of the tabernacle. And that was going to be the place of worship that the Israelites, they were becoming a nation, and they were going to have in the wilderness a tabernacle that they could set up and then take down and then move to the next place. But it's not as simple as that. It is extremely complex, and I encourage all of you to read that scripture where it's described. Moses had to keep in his brain or write it down. He was an author. He wrote the first 5 books. He was brilliant. He had had 40 years training in Egypt. Then remember, 40 years in the desert. And then he began, when he was 80, to lead the children for 40 years. So his life is divided in 3 40-year periods. And it's so interesting how the analogies, because this tabernacle is really the model. It says in the Bible, it's the model of heaven. It says it's the pattern of heaven. People want to know, what does heaven look like? God said the tabernacle is the pattern. It's very interesting, very complicated. They had to have dyed fabric, dyed red, dyed blue, dyed purple, and they had a lot of gold from Egypt, and they used that to cover the altar and the Holy of Holies, and they had to have certain wood and badger skins, and this was heavy to carry, and only the priests or the house of Levi could put it up or take it down, because it was holy to the Lord. Well, if you move forward, and after they're in the wilderness and they become a nation, Moses dies, and Joshua then, remember, takes the land of Canaan, and they become a people. They become a people, and they are ruled by judges. There's a period of the judges. Remember, Samuel was prophet, priest, and king, and then there were, remember, Deborah and many judges, and God was their king. But the people weren't happy. They said, no, we want a real king. We want to be like the other nations. And so God said, okay, you're not going to like it, but he said, you are going to, you're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have to give your sons for war. They said, we don't care. We want a king. So God granted their request, and remember, there was King Saul, and then he didn't obey, so King David, and then King Solomon. And David, his whole goal in life was to build the temple. Well, he didn't get to build the temple because he was a man of bloodshed, because he had been in so many wars. God said, no, I'm going to let Solomon build it. So Solomon builds it. You can read all of this in Chronicles. It's all there. And where did they get the pattern for the temple? From the tabernacle. Yes. Now, isn't that interesting? God is a God of order, beauty, and they had pillars. You know, when you go to the cathedrals of Europe, you'll see the Gothic, you'll see the Baroque, you'll see the Corinthian pillars, and they have different design. God had pillars in the temple. And you know what they had on the top? Lilies. Yes, lilies. Lily is a beautiful symbol, still used in the church today, because Christ is called the lily of the valley. I love lilies. They're pure and white and sweet and beautiful, and they grow in the valleys. Sometimes we can feel we're in a valley, but if we're lilies, we'll bloom. We'll bloom. Yes, we will. And we'll stand up. A lily is standing up and praising God, even in the valley. Yes. Beautiful picture. Well, so I was thinking about Telemann, fast forward. So you have this ancient music of Israel, and you have the choirs, and then of course the Greeks and the Romans had their choirs too. But the early church, when they started their music, they wanted to look back to a pattern, and they would sing songs and hymns and spiritual songs. And they had a lot of singing of the Old Testament, the Psalms. There's so many songs in the Old Testament. You start with Jubal. He's the first musician in the Bible. He played the organ, that's in Genesis, and he was the maker of musical instruments. Then you have that beautiful song of Miriam. And then you have Moses, that's at the beginning when they leave Passover, they leave. But when Moses is going to die, and he's not going to go in the promised land, but he's giving them the last blessing, he sings a song. Yes. And that song is in Deuteronomy, and you can read that song. It's a beautiful song. And what he does in that song is very interesting. It's what Miriam does. They tell the whole history of Israel to that time. And you know that's what Hannah, when Hannah was given Samuel, and she couldn't have a child, and she was crying, and then God gave her Samuel, and she sings a song very similar to Mary's Magnificat. And she tells all the history of Israel and God's great ways. Then you have Elizabeth. She gets a song when she's bearing John the Baptist. Then we have Mary's song, the famous Magnificat. And read that. She talks about the greatness of God and what he has done and what he is going to do for his people. She prophesies. Yes, it's so beautiful. The music is so big. Johann Sebastian Bach and Telemann, and I am sure Scarlatti, I am sure Vivaldi was the red-headed priest in Italy. They had come out of the Renaissance, but they were Christian men that wrote sacred music, and they wrote music for the church. They would all look back to Chronicles and to the worship that was going on in the Old Testament. It was their model. Bach's Bible survived, and it's in the museum in Germany. I haven't seen it, but I have read about it, and what I read was that his whole Bible is so marked in Chronicles, where Solomon is dedicating the temple and the music is explained. He's just got it underlined. This tea, by the way, is fabulous. Well, so I've done a study on the history of Israel's song. I've done it on several levels, but I taught 2 classes in it, and I did my own study before that, a paper I did on it, and a couple papers. And I like to look at the stream, because you go through early church, then you go to Middle Ages, and you have the chants. And those chants are said to have originated in the temple. That was part of the temple worship. They knew about the chants. And that's when you hear Compline, beautiful. Then you move into the Renaissance and Palestrina, the wonderful Renaissance composer. And we move forward to Vivaldi, like I said, and Scarlatti. And then we move, and Corelli, the Italian school. And then we move up to that German Reformation. Those were Reformation. Those were all Lutheran. They came out of the Protestant Reformation, because Martin Luther said music is as important as preaching. And he required all of the Lutheran pastors to be trained in music. He encouraged them to write hymns, to lead in hymns, to be able to sing in tune, and to be able to play an instrument if possible. This is why the hymn book exploded. Martin Luther himself wrote 1,000 hymns. Many of them have been lost, but then you move forward, and then you go to England, and you have the great hymn writers of the 1700s there. You have Isaac Watts, and you have Charles Wesley, and then you move to the 1800s, and you get people like Fanny Crosby, and I'm going to leave people out because there are so many. And then suddenly these hymn books are in the church, and there's like 700 hymns. And then you go up to Scotland, and when I went to Scotland to the Kirk, the Scottish church, they had the Psalter, and it had all 150 psalms in meter. And they had a hymn book that went with it with tunes that you could trade off 500 tunes in the same meter. The possibilities were endless. And then you had certain sects in denominations that thought they should just sing. Some of the Mennonites were that way, and so they just sang in harmony. They created the most beautiful harmony, a cappella choir singing with their voices. So we're rich. We're very, very rich. We have a heritage. And I encourage you to read about Telemann and look up his music and enjoy. And I just thank you so much for joining me today on the tea table. You know, my little flowers, there, let's put them like that. I think putting a flower on the tea tray, and isn't that the most beautiful pot? You know, I just did not realize that a bright pink like that, I have a lot of different cups, but nothing matched it. Nothing. I didn't have any cup that was this color. This is like a modern color. And yet, look at this. It may be modern, but it's not really modern. It's God's color. It's the color that you have in the jungle, and you have in Hawaii, and you have in the islands. Yes, the colors have been with us. Well, don't forget, have a strawberry, have a piece of cheese and a cracker. I tell you, it's the best treat. It's no sugar and it's natural. Very low in calorie and very satisfying. You feel healthy and energetic afterwards. Doesn't drag you down. Well, blessings upon all of you today, and happy summer from the tea table. Welcome, June. We welcome you. It's going to be a good summer. Yes. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for your likes. Thank you for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And I would really appreciate that. And share and pass it along. And if you have a comment, I love it. Well, the butterfly says new life. The butterfly says transformation. Take the old with the new for the future. Yes, it's all good news when you know God loves you, and He loves each of you, and He loves me. Have a fabulous week. Look forward to seeing you next time.